Good evening. Welcome to the Carver Conservation Commission meeting of Wednesday, July 20th, 2022. We will start with the order of business on our agenda. First up is 15 Holmes Avenue, a violation. Is there someone here from 15 Holmes? Would you come up, please, to the front and sign in? Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you tonight?
Good, thanks.
Could you
move the
pull
microphone a little bit closer?
Yeah, because the air conditioning is going to delete out the sound.
It's going to drown me out.
Yeah.
You're probably the first that's told me an air conditioner can drown my sound out.
Could you give us your name, please?
Sure, I'm Karen Holland.
Karen Holland, okay. We asked you to come in tonight because we received a complaint that there was backhoe work and tree removal being done down by Cooper's Pond. Is that where you are?
Yes, sir.
And there are photos that were submitted to the conservation agent, and we asked you in tonight to explain what you're doing, since that is a protected area.
Yeah. So the area that's in discussion is a part of the beach that it has overgrown. It's like overtaken our small beach area. Historically, we've cleared it, and our paddle boats were parked in that area. Our mom died back in 2017, and when she passed, it kind of got away from us a little bit. Now, the backhoes were not invited in to clear that property. The backhoes belong to a person staying at that property, and I was like, well, can you just clear that part? Take the there was a rotted railroad tie down there, and then there were all kinds of bugs, and then there's like a smaller retaining wall that had some rebar in it, and the top of that wall had come off, and the rebar was sticking out. I couldn't get it out, and I was just like, could you just clean that up for me? I was under the impression that if it was under 2 inch in diameter, that we could clear that.
No?
Okay, well, I'm sorry, I apologize. But there were no trees. There was like some shrubs and just some overgrown like thorns and things like that kind of overtook where the paddle boats were.
Okay, that's generally called understory. It's the foliage that grows under the canopy of the taller trees, and that's protected. That can't be cleared really at all. There's something called vista pruning that allows you to remove 10% of the canopy that covers that shades the ground, but only 10%. So it has to kind of be judicious clearing, and certainly ground cover, shrubs, bushes, any kind of foliage that's holding the soil in place with its root system has to remain, or at a minimum you need to come before this commission to have us come out and take a look so you can describe what it is you would like to do. Mm-hmm. And then we can take a look at that, and if we can informally tell you what steps we would like you to take next if it's something that we feel may have some value. In most cases, it would be a notice of intent to do some changes. If anyone wants to see the photos, that's that. So my suggestion at this point would be for us probably to go on a site visit at some point and take a look at the shoreline of
Sure.
exactly what was there, and then kind of come back and make a determination of what we think your next steps should be. Is that fair to you?
Sure.
Now, are you there full-time, or is that...
I am not.
You're not? Okay. Would you give us permission to access the property when we can without your presence?
So I would need to just make sure that the schedule works for the people that live in the property. So if there's a way you can just give me a date and time, I can confirm that.
Okay, it would most likely be August 3rd, right? That's the Wednesday of our next meeting.
Right.
10 o'clock, let's say?
Yeah, 10 o'clock, August
10
3rd.
o'clock, 2 weeks from today.
Okay. And who do I get back to confirm that date?
Mr. Flaherty here is the Carver Conservation Agent, and he can be reached through the Town Hall phone number.
Okay.
All right, at this point, that's really all we need to do, so
Okay.
we'll do that, and then we'll probably have you come back at a subsequent meeting, which would probably be 2 weeks after that, like the 17th of August.
Okay, thank you.
All right? Thank you for coming in. All right. Next,
Apologies, that didn't happen.
what's that?
Traffic, sorry. Those are-
Oh, okay. It happens.
And they're renting it.
Jellystone Park, Cranberry Acres Campground, Shoestring Road, plan revision. What is it? Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. My name is Dan Flores with SFC Engineering. I'm here on behalf of the owners of Jellystone Park, which is NGR Cape Cod LLC. I just handed out some plans to speak to. I also have some full-size, if there's some place I could prop them up somewhere.
Yeah, we're good.
Or I can even put them right on a chair next to me. And
Okay, that's fine.
Let's just see what he's planning on doing.
Yeah, we don't have a tripod here.
Jeez, I don't know why.
I'll start bringing it up. There is.
It's not gonna stay there.
All right, I'm here tonight to show you some changes we are proposing. The owners have brought SFC on to make some revisions to the approved plans that you guys have seen already. This is within Phase 2, which is up on the hillside, and
Looking for that drawing.
if you look at the front sheet there, you can see Phase 2 sites. So basically, this area up on the hill. And basically, they've asked me to better represent their vision for the campground for this area. The previous plan that you had seen had basically clear cut that hilltop. I think there's about a 12-foot cut previously proposed to just take that hill off. And my task has been to maintain the grades, try to maintain vegetation, and not lose any sites. So previously, and I'll just show this now. So this is sheet number 4 in that packet.
Okay.
And this shows what we're proposing. It's the same layout as previously seen. There are some minor changes. One change, the building that was proposed, we reduced that in size from a 60 by 80 building, it's now going to be 30 by 45 feet
And where's that building located?
Right.
Oh, okay.
here. It used to be here, it just got slid over.
Oh, the laundry building, okay.
Yep. Another change is we've added a second access point. So you can see here, down to the existing sites. Previously, the plan only had a single access up the hill here. That second access is within the 200-foot riparian zone. But overall, what we have done is, again, try to work with the grades that exist today. Not cut the whole hill off, but rather work with them. That allows the sites to be fit in better, try to save trees, try to save vegetation. By doing so, that picks up the outer roads, which then introduces some additional fill areas. So when we did this, we do have additional impacts within the 200-foot riparian zone for this roadway, and we've moved sites along it as well here. And that area is approximately 39,000 square feet. That number, about 70% of that is fill area. Again, because we're keeping the road up high, we now have to fill over to it. We do keep all of the impacts out of the 100-foot setback and the 100-foot riparian. I'm sorry, out of the 100-foot riparian. The other area is down here. Again, the road is now picked back up to match the grades. Therefore, we have to have additional impact with fill coming down the hill. The previous plan had impacts within the 200-foot riparian and up to the 65-foot buffer. We maintain that. We don't have any additional impacts within the 65-foot buffer. We just extend some of our impact here and a little bit of it here. The wastewater treatment system is unchanged. This change in grades necessitates a new stormwater approach, whereas previously crushed stone was proposed for all the drives in order to infiltrate. We've designed a bioretention area here. We're using some gravel pave and grass pave pervious technology to allow infiltration at the site, at the source. And we also propose some dry wells with deep sump catch basins. All in all, we're still meeting the 10 criteria of the mass stormwater. We also result in a net reduction in peak flow and a net reduction in volume with this. Any questions on this? I do have two other areas I wanted to show you, just again to bring this to your attention as I move forward.
The number of spots for trailers or camping remains about the same?
It's 118 on this area. For the site itself, it was approved for 325. Our final design is 300.
Okay.
So we do have a net reduction in sites, just because trying to make things fit.
Okay. But you're adding 4 or just relocating 4 along that new road?
Correct.
Okay.
If you look, the sites are spread out a bit more. You can see some open area here, here. That requires us now to move some sites out beyond the previous footprint.
Okay.
I can show you the other area also. There's some minor changes I wanted to make you aware of.
Let me just ask, anybody else have any questions? Dan, Mr. Badger.
Hi. The wastewater treatment system, you said, is not changed, but the location is approved for how many sites?
It's still, it's actually approved for 325 sites. That treats the entire campground development.
Okay, and we have that documented somewhere? Okay. And there are going to be how many altogether? 118?
For the site, 300, so that system will see 300 sites versus 325.
325, okay. All right.
Okay.
Over at the entrance area, this is sheet number 10 in the plans.
Yeah, not numbered.
Kind of a square.
There's been some readjustment to this area. We did move some sites here, but that's outside of the wetland area. One thing to note, they had a proposed pavilion that was down in this area that's been relocated actually outside of the buffer. Actually, it just touches it now. There was also a check-in area that was proposed down in this area. It's been moved up the road. This road crests, and it's a better location. And then the abutter has requested that we add two 30-foot guardrails here where the culvert crosses under Shoestring Road.
So this new check-in area, this little island, is new?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
and-
it's been moved, yes.
All right. Where was it located before? I mean, were they going to keep it where it is now, sort of the gate where it is now? Was that their original plan,
Yeah,
do you know?
so right now, today, the check-in is down in this area.
Right,
No, I'm sorry, down here, actually.
yeah,
They want to have it far enough away that it's truly a gate, no one can get in. By placing it there, that prevents all access to the sites.
okay. So that's within the 65.
Yes.
It's going to need an NOI, and a new variance. We can't do any of this with a discussion. I'm not inclined to do that. I want more information. There's a lot going on within 65 all over this place.
Can you revise an NOI?
You can amend the order of conditions, which would be a revised filing, yes.
Okay, but that would require, well, these plans are done, so it's just really another hearing?
So
Gonna
in
be
a
a
sense,
public
he's
hearing.
starting over, but he's gonna go under that DEP number. And
Okay.
we'll cut him a new OOC, the dates will stay the same. So in other words, if there's 2 years left, he would have 2 years left.
Okay. Okay.
This still needs to be a public hearing.
Yeah, is it still a public hearing, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, everything goes the same, it's just not,
To be advertised?
yes.
Yeah, it has to be
It has to be
re-advertised.
advertised too.
Okay,
Why don't we just do that?
okay.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a brand new filing.
And we could set that,
It's cleaner.
a site visit for this also. I'm sure the place is pretty, you guys are open for business?
Yes, limited to that area we just described, the Phase 2, and some of the sites in the existing Phase 1 area.
So we wanted to do a site visit. We could see what you're proposing to do
Yep,
without interfering with your daily operation.
yes.
We do that.
All right.
And I like to do that on a Saturday since some of us work.
Okay.
It's nice to be retired. I don't have that luxury like our chairman.
All right, does anybody else have any comments on this?
Well, we could do a 4 o'clock in the afternoon site visit. Any day you'd like.
Okay,
That might be better for Dan, because Dan doesn't get Saturdays.
right. Okay, and my next 3 Saturdays are booked, so,
Of course they are, because you're very popular.
no, I just know other people who have jobs. So,
Phase 2 of the crowd coming, is
so we'll want to have an amended NOI,
Okay.
or amended order of conditions. And we'll set up a site visit. I think from the standpoint of my personal concern, I'm not concerned. I just want to really get a gauge on where this new entranceway is, because that's within the 65. The other is kind of almost all within the 200 feet and outside of the 100. And
There's a couple of things that are right on the 65, there's a retaining wall and stuff, I assume, has that already been approved?
it's
Did you do that the
close.
last
I
time?
think so, yeah.
Close to that. It's just minor, and they're changing. They're not flattening the hill as much. They're retaining the
No, I
grade,
know
which is
what they're
a
doing.
plus. But the entranceway is a little bit. I just want to see where that is and what that's going to look like.
Because frankly, all of Shoestring Road is within the 65, because the bog is on the
Yeah, once it
immediate
comes.
shoulder.
Yeah, once it
So
comes down the hill,
It's
it's
pretty
there.
hard to get out of the 65, you can't do it on Shoestring.
Right. No, I know. I just want to take a look. So, so we'll set up a site visit probably for an afternoon, a late afternoon, in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll ask you to come back in. We'll try to arrange it so
Our
that
next meeting is what, August?
our next meeting is August 3rd.
So we could perhaps, could we get it published in time for that?
No,
No, we couldn't. It had to be the meeting after that, because this has to be published.
the 17th.
So it'll be the
17th, okay.
Yeah.
And we'll try to get the site visit in probably that week of August 3rd.
Okay. And then just real quick, in the Phase 1 development, there was a pool area that was shown,
Yes.
and I'm not clear on what this board has seen for that. We do have to go back to the planning board once we do a full development plan for that pool area. Are you also looking for us to come back to show that? Again, I apologize, I'm not sure what you've
No,
seen.
that was an area of concern because of the filtration system that they were gonna.
Yeah, but we settled on that. That might have more to do with the pond, I thought, not the pool.
Yeah, there was a question about the filtration system of the pool, but I believe that the only thing within our jurisdiction was the parking on the north side of the pool. I think the pool itself was outside.
It is.
I think.
I'm pretty sure it is. I don't think we dealt more with the pond than we dealt with, I don't remember anything about the pool.
I remember that they were
No, we were talking about, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, through the chair, I think we were talking about them doing some algae containment
Yeah.
Oh, that
on the
was a separate
pond
filing, yes.
that had nothing to do with the pool.
No.
We were it was a separate filing, and we were allowing them to use an algicide because in order to make the pond palatable. I don't
I think what I'm
recall.
remembering about the pool is that there was something that was gonna come up later that you would discuss with us. but-
Yeah, we never discussed it, we never had
Yeah.
any discussion on the pool.
Right, I don't think I think Dan's right, that the pool plans weren't finalized yet, and I think we had a little discussion about the surround of the pool
Yeah.
and the water staying on
apron.
top of that and the chlorine
Yep.
and other chemicals that might be in the pool. So if there's something that's pool related, you maybe should give us another couple of sheets, showing the location. I don't think it's on here, might be, but I'm not.
Yeah,
Pool's in the same place
sheet
it always
number,
was, right? You didn't
Yeah.
move the pool, did you?
nope,
No, it was a runoff concern.
Yeah.
So it's really still grandfathered, it's been there,
yeah, sheet number 9 shows it.
it's been there forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a existing pool there now. The intent now is basically, it's always been the same. They're gonna be developing a new pool area in that area shown.
Okay. The water park area. Yeah.
Yeah, and we talked about that too, the water park that was going
Right.
in, but that was on the far end.
Okay.
That's why I'd like to take a look at it again,
Yeah.
that's all.
Yeah. So we'll set up a site visit and have you come back on the 17th.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
You want to set the site visit? Or you want to just give them a heads up? Tell you what, let's do it all on the 3rd. And I'll just make arrangements to be available that day and take another day
The
off.
morning of the 3rd.
Is that going to work for you, Dan?
For that first week of August, I can do that.
Dave?
All right. Yeah. So, like 11 o'clock, 10:45? because we're going to be
Well, let's do the first one at 10 and we
Yeah,
get there
that
when we
one will
get
go
there.
quick.
up
The
in
Holmes-
North.
The Holmes Ave one.
Yeah, but
let's
that's still
do that,
it's a
and then-
15-minute drive to where we're going.
I know,
Yeah,
but
so
Yeah.
we'll do the first one at 10 o'clock and we'll get there when we get there.
All right, so 10:30 is 10:45
10:45.
on
ish.
August 3rd. Yeah, okay,
Thank you.
thank
that
you.
work?
Yep, works for me. Okay,
200 sites.
Pine Ridge Way, maintenance of mowing on Backlog to occur September 9th, 2022. Anyone here from Pine Ridge Way?
Well, yeah. I don't know if you recall, and Harold brought me the minutes. For 2017, we went out there and made the abandoned bog that's on the other side of Pine Ridge.
Yep,
And the association wanted to clear around the bog
Yep.
and do some work around the bog, and we said, okay. And then we went out again in 2019, and same thing, included mowing and cutting the trees and brush around the edges, because it gets all overgrown
Yep.
and people walk around there.
yeah, that's the one that has the sluiceway kind of
Yeah,
up through
yeah.
it, out to the
And,
pond.
Bob Pano from Makepeace, he's from Makepeace, right? Oh. Oh, okay, yes, and so he does the maintenance work.
Bob's a former trustee.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, okay, yes,
He's lived there since they were first built.
Yeah.
So he's kind of a subject matter expert.
yeah. But the gentleman from Makepeace does the cutting and stuff, right? Is that what you said, Harold? Yeah, right, right. But you recall that we...
Yeah, I do.
So,
Can I ask you both to sign in, please, just so we have your name for the record?
so they're just basically letting us know that...
All right.
that they're gonna-
Yeah, yes, I remember it's been done.
Yeah.
And we've been out there a couple of times. I have no problem.
They know what
with
they're doing, let them do it again.
it. Okay. Everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
Just let them do it again? I mean, it's regular bog maintenance. Okay.
It's up to you, you want a motion, you just want to let it go with that?
No, I think that we're good.
Yeah,
You know, it's
Yeah.
just discussion, so
yeah.
that's fine. It's not a
Okay.
thing. All right, next up on the agenda, what's written on the agenda is not exactly correct. It's a discussion of a possibility of writing a letter to the planning board regarding the jurisdiction of wetlands and monitoring of wetlands. Mr. Germain asked that this be added. It's not specific to a certain project.
No, this is not specific to Spring Street. At the last planning board meeting, the planning board seemed to take issue with a variance that was granted by this commission on a well, as well as they had some questions about a septic system. And the only argument that I have is that, first of all, on this particular site, they're asking for revisions of plans, but that's out of their lane. Do you know what I mean? The planning board has a job to do. Earth removal has a job to do. Conservation has a job to do. Board of Health has a job to do. And the planning board is kind of infringing on areas that's none of their business. It's not their concern. They deal with what they deal with. We don't have any right to overrule the planning board that does something in the dry land any more than they don't have the right to tell an applicant that we've given a variance to for a well that they can't have it there because they don't like it. That's not in their wheelhouse. So my request is that, and very nicely, perhaps there should be a definition of the job description of what the planning board's rights are and what their powers to be are and what conservation's are and what Board of Health and earth removal and so on and so forth. There seems to be a little bit of overlapping and a whole lot of I don't like what you're doing, even though they have permission from a board that was duly authorized to give it to them. So this just came up at the last planning board meeting. I found it very disturbing. I think it's overreach on the planning board's part. I don't think they have the right to tell an applicant that they don't like what conservation just did. I don't think that that's their job. Any more than we don't have the right to tell the planning board or tell an applicant we don't like what the planning board did. So, that's where I'm at with it.
Okay. I am in agreement that the roles and the scope of what each commission should be able to do needs to be identified and defined. But I think that that's something that has to be done internally within the planning department of the
Planning
town.
department has no power over the purview of the planning board any more than you have purview over the Conservation Commission. You can advise us. We don't have to listen. You can't correct us. You can't invalidate a vote of the commission. The town planner cannot invalidate a vote of the planning board regardless of how wrong that vote is or how right that vote is. If you ask Tom Bott, he'll tell you that I work for the elected members of the planning board. Not the other way around. They don't work for him, nor should they. Any more than we don't work for this gentleman or Brooke, and technically they really don't work for us, but they're advisors. We can ignore their advice and do whatever we want as a commission. I think it should be just a simple, friendly letter that comes through the town administrator's office, just defining this is where we're at.
Then maybe it's the town administrator, because there has to be a set of rules that determines who
That's called the bylaws.
holds sway over things. All right, fine. And if that's what it is, then maybe that's what our letter is. That it states that the bylaws determine that we have the authority over that 100-foot buffer.
We do.
And
So I guess a quick question. So they wanted, the planning board asked that the well be moved?
Yes. They want it
Why?
re-engineered. They don't like it there.
well, you know,
That happens to be the straw, because, it was even mentioned at that planning board meeting that we had made a statement saying that we've allowed this
Yeah.
several places. We've never really denied a variance for a well in the 65 because of the 150-foot setback from a septic system. So we've granted that 9 times out of 10. In fact, I don't know that we've ever said no.
right,
But-
and,
So I
and
just don't understand why they would have an issue with where the well is.
Because this has become a very politicized project.
well, the project being put aside, it sets a precedent.
Yes, it does.
It sets a precedent that if the planning board now is denying the ability for anyone to put a well within the 65 feet, then we can't allow anyone to do it. Because the second we allow someone to do it that doesn't have to go in front of the planning board, whoever's been denied that right to put a well in 65 feet by the planning board is going to come after the town and sue the town saying, we're being treated differently. We're being discriminated upon because we had to go to the planning board.
What happens all too often is there are decisions made by planning, conservation, earth removal that come as a surprise or to another commission when there are bylaws that each are set to follow. I think, if we want to be concerned about overlap, that's one thing. I guess the terminology I'm looking for is some type of checks and balances so that we're all between the commissions are keeping each other honest with being clear, not only knowing our lane, but also knowing their lane and identifying when they go awry. I think there's something to that. I know that there are times where, I've had disagreements with this body, but at the same time, I know that we were within the scope of our bylaws. However, there have been more than a few times where we've been left wondering why the planning board made the decisions they did, because it seemed like overreach. The other thing that I've mentioned more than a handful of times is that too often we look at where our bylaws are in terms of direct distance and not thinking, I've used the term more and more, thinking about our issues three-dimensionally in terms of grade, underground gradient, and where actually water is flowing. Even though the line stops here, we all know that different from a hydrological standpoint, things are flowing in a given direction and have a much bigger effect. And I don't think planning takes into consideration those
they do.
issues. So,
I think they do, and you know,
well, if they had, I can list you a whole bunch of places that got approved for a build that there is no way if they were taking consideration of how it would affect the abutters who are now in different parts of town dealing with flooding because of certain areas that have been built up. That's
okay. I see your point, but the underground water flows. It's really hard to determine what something that you can't see,
there's okay.
And how do you quantify that? I mean, is it our 100 feet plus 500 feet underground downstream? Is it 10 miles downstream?
I think
Underground.
I think we're stretching it from the.
Yeah,
point
I
of-
agree. I don't think that we have to do there.
I don't have our mandate right in front of us,
It's
but
not a question of a mandate. We know that we have power within the 100-foot buffer zone, and they don't. And that's what it basically boils down to.
Yeah.
So I'm not aware of any board that can overturn a variance of another board. And yet seems to be where the conversation was headed. So I just simply like the planning board to stay in their lane, and conservation will stay in their lane, and earth removal can stay in their lane, and everybody will be happy. We can put a little maypole out front and dance around it. But, there is not one board that has power over all other boards in this town. And they certainly are not that board if it was ever to be anyhow. So that's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
I'd like to have the conservation agents look into it and perhaps get with the town planner. I would also suggest you get with Kevin Forge, because there's some issues with this very same thing with the Board of Health, and perhaps all of you can get together and come back to its respective committees with a report
Okay,
as to how we can try to sing kumbaya here
sure.
without having bring
Yeah.
paintball guns to meetings.
Based on what not only the Carver bylaws are, but the Commonwealth bylaws are.
Sure.
Who has sway over what particular things. And just a couple of things that I want to say about anything with I think we've got a really good track record with wells and allowing them in the 65-foot, because we know that if a well is done right, you don't have to touch it for 30 years. So it's the least intrusive, and we generally have a good track record of identifying a potential other place to put a well that's outside it if that exists.
And it's only a temporary in.
Yes.
Once you put the well in.
It's a
done.
small
It
footprint
gets-
too.
you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, it's not-
So, I think we do our job as well as we can, and grant variances really only when necessary. And
Well, we bent over backwards to do exactly that, i.e. Crystal Lake. We've got wells that are literally at the water line lapping off the pond because the septic system's as far away as they can possibly get it in the front yard, and even then it's only 100 feet away.
Right.
But there's nothing you can do about that. You certainly can't tell a resident, well, I'm sorry, you can't have a sewer and water until your house down. So you do everything you can to make it work. This is what I think that this commission always does with respect to the wetlands.
Right.
Well, there is a hardship
Yeah.
right there. You just said it. I mean, we do have to, look at a hardship.
This particular site happened to be because this is where it best laid out. And, like I said, the precedent's been set. We've done it before. And I think it's wrong that there should be even conversation from another board chastising the work of a different board. And I think that kind of stuff gets nobody anywhere.
all right.
So I would
So-
like very much for the groups that be to sit down, have a little powwow, and then you guys can come back and let us know what respectively is going to be done, and then if we have to go to a different level, we'll do it, but I prefer not to.
Right, yeah, I just, see if there can be, setting of ground rules for of who can do what and, and doesn't step on anyone else's turf.
Perfect.
So to speak. Okay, thank you.
Actually, the only thing I would
sorry,
say,
go ahead.
amend to that is, I'm absolutely okay with stepping on toes if it's going to create a better outcome for all. In terms of, I sometimes cringe when I hear precedent, when I think that in previous decisions were not always maybe the best decisions, or things could always been better. And anybody here who thinks that we can't all always do better next time should maybe think about, moving on, because I believe that we could always improve based on the more information we get, the better we can stand to make better decisions. That's all I mean by that. So if we can tighten up certain bylaws or improve things, and I'm not just talking about us, I'm talking about everybody, I think that some technical review committee would be warranted.
Right, but I think that for the most part, we err on the side of conservation.
Sometimes I think we err on the side of not wanting to offend people. And that part bothers me more times than not. And I would like to just see us do better, because I think we can. That's all.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so that takes care of discussions and business. We'll read the minutes later, and we'll go to our first only hearing of the evening. 0 South Meadow Road. It's a new hearing. Therefore, notice is hereby given in accordance with the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, MGL Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Carver Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Citation 9.2, that a public hearing will be held at 7:00 p.m. on Wednesday, July 20th, 2022, in Meeting Room 1 at Carver Town Hall to hear the notice of intent submitted by Edgewood Bogs, LLC, for the South Meadow Wetland Reserve Easement Restoration Project. The project will be located in previously disturbed bordering land subject to flooding, bordering vegetated wetlands, BVW/Cranberry Bogs, bank, riverfront area, and the 100-foot and 65-foot buffer zone. The proposed project is located at 0 South Meadow Road, Assessors Parcels 120-8-0 and 115-16-0 in Carver. All interested parties are invited to attend. A copy of the plan is on file at the permitting department and may be reviewed during normal business hours. Additionally, an application for 401 water quality certification is pending before Mass DEP. Additional information may be obtained by contacting the department or Beals & Thomas, Inc. at 508-366-0560. Comments for the 401 water quality certification has a 21-day comment period. Comments can be mailed to the Mass DEP Southeast Regional Office, 25 Riverside Drive, Lakeville, Massachusetts, 02347, or call 508-946-2700 for additional information. Any 10 persons of the Commonwealth, any aggrieved person, or any governmental body or private organization with a mandate to protect the environment that has submitted written comments may also appeal the department's certification, and that failure to submit comments before the end of the public comment period may result in the waiver of any right to an adjudicatory hearing. Okay.
That was a long one.
It was. Hi.
Extra long ad. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Sarah Stearns with Beals & Thomas, and with me is my colleague from Mass DER, Department of Ecological Restoration, is Jess Cohn. We are here representing the applicant, Edgewood Cranberry Bogs, and we have before you a project that we're calling South Meadow Reserve Wetland Restoration Project. So I think the board has seen one other of these somewhat recently, but it's a relatively new concept for Carver. This is a partnership type program with the USDA, the NRCS portion of the USDA, as well as Mass DER and the cranberry grower. So this grower owner has decided to retire this 34-acre piece of ownership, and as part of that, this site qualified for a wetland reserve easement through the NRCS and as a priority project through Mass DER, Cranberry Restoration Program. So between those two entities and the landowner, a wetland reserve easement or conservation easement has been put on the property. It is not being cultivated as a cranberry bog anymore. Last year was their last harvest, so, although there are berries still out there, as we saw today. We were able to walk the site with Gary and one member, David, which was great. For anyone who would like to visit the site, the landowner had said, if any of you would like to stop by, if you're in the neighborhood, please feel free, take a walk around, check it out. It is located off of Ward Street, so off of South Meadow Road, off of Ward Street. It's one of those properties that has a 0 address, so I just use the next driveway after number 17 as the locus, and you can pull right in. So essentially, the restoration of this bog that has been in production since the 1930s, or most of it has been in production since the 1930s. The idea is to bring it back to its natural wetland state. So we have our goals written in our application, and I'll just read them to make sure I cover all of them. Restore the natural hydrologic conditions to support a self-sustaining wetland and climate resiliency. Eliminate barriers to fish and wildlife movement, address farm-related physical simplification to enhance habitat and expand biota, and provide opportunities for passive recreation. So that's a long way of saying bringing it back to its natural state. In the plans and packets, we've included a number of photos and mapping, and I believe you all have the reduced size plans. And we're happy to go through those. But really, essentially, if you look at pages RP 1, 2, and 3, there's a color rendering of what the bog itself looks like today with our proposed overlay on it. And essentially, this is eliminating the existing agricultural bypass canal and bringing the water back through the bog itself in a naturalized channel. There are a lot of details covered in the NOI package to get to this point, and we're happy to go through those in a little bit more detail as well, and Jess can probably take care of that since she's really great at giving overview of her program and some of the projects that they've done in the state. I think there are 7 completed projects or under construction.
Completed, yep, Cranberry Bog Restoration Projects.
So we were actually able a few weeks ago to go visit a recently completed project, not too dissimilar from this site in Plymouth, called Foothills Preserve, and I highly recommend if you're in that neighborhood taking a ride over there and a walk around. That was recently done 2 years ago, I think. So it's a relatively new project, and you can see remnant bog pieces. You can sort of tell if you know that it was a cranberry bog, you can tell, but it's taking on new life. There's a lot of interesting channels that were developed, a real diversity of plants. Some wood was added for habitat and kind of helping to slow down water and create little pools. It's really cool, and it's a great example of what we want to accomplish on Edgewood Bogs here. So again, it's about 34 acres in total. It's one of those sites that, you know, a bypass canal was constructed in the I'm not going to say because I don't remember off the top of my head, too many dates. And a bypass canal was constructed to, you know, simplify water movement for the farming practices, but really unneeded for this type of restoration. And I think we have a really good plan layout here, and when Jess is talking I can show the bigger plans, but you know, you can see just from this small page the sinuous channel that we're proposing with some different gradation. Essentially the idea is to rough up the existing cranberry mat and really kind of pull out the sand layers that have been added over many decades, and really just expose that seed bank. Another big piece of it is to remove the existing dike roads that surround the segments of bog and use that to plug up the ditches and the bypass canal, so that we're really kind of making sure that the water is being directed into this constructed channel and some pools that really tries to meet the goals that I just ran through throughout the site. So this, what we filed, which was something that we don't do that often, is an ecological restoration NOI. And so you'll notice that that was a pretty robust submission, and that's because there are a lot of additional pieces that go along with one of these restoration project notices of intent. So it's similar to a standard NOI, but it asks for a bit more information. And we're working, even within the bogs, within a lot of different resource areas that overlap out here. So we've really tried to do a thorough analysis of what really amounts to temporary work within the resource areas for the sake of improvement and restoration. But, you know, the way the regulations are under the Act, we really need to document what resource areas specifically we're working in and how we take it from existing conditions today as a cultivated monoculture to what we hope will be a diverse, self-sustaining wetland system, and really give it the jump start that it needs to come back to a natural landscape. So I will turn it over to Jess to give a little background about what she does with Mass DER and the specifics about this program, and I'll flip pages if that's okay while you're talking so the room can see a bit too.
Thanks, Sarah. And I'll give an intro to myself and the program, but one thing I just wanted to add is, at least in our program, when it comes to retired or abandoned cranberry bog landscapes that are slated to be restored, the term we use often is disturbance for rejuvenation. So we've found that when bogs are retired or abandoned post-farming, they don't tend to self-recover well. We have data at the state. We've been tracking some of these landscapes, and the restoration interventions that we're proposing today are to help mitigate, you know, the landscape becoming sort of a scar on in the area, and put the landscape back on a trajectory of healing and on a trajectory of performing ecological functions of a wetland, because we know from our assessment that the area historically was a wetland stream complex. And so my name is Jess Cohn. I'm a project manager in the Division of Ecological Restoration at the state. We are a division of the Department of Fish and Game. We're a small group, and our mission is to restore and protect rivers, wetlands, watersheds in Massachusetts for the benefit of people and the environment. We're a very action-oriented, partnership-based group, and we currently oversee 75 active restoration projects through our Priority Projects program in the state, and have completed 100 restoration projects in the past, including 7 cranberry bog restoration projects. This is our first cranberry bog restoration project in Carver, so we're really excited to introduce the program to you all and to be here tonight. In my role in DER, DER specifically has a cranberry bog program to meet the demand for some of the retired and abandoned bog landscapes in Massachusetts. And in that program, we provide funding and technical assistance to landowners and farmers that are interested in restoring healthy wetlands on their retired cranberry bogs. So it's kind of a green exit strategy, if you will. When a farmer makes a decision or a landowner makes a decision to retire and no longer farm, they have multiple decisions at that point. And if they are interested in a conservation restoration approach, they can work with our office, apply. It's a competitive program, but you can certainly send them my way and I can tell them more about it. So this project here tonight was selected as a state priority project and received funding and project management assistance from our office. Like I said, we're really excited because this is our first restoration project in Carver, surprisingly. And Our office has been working with this site since 2018. That was when DER declared South Meadow Bogs a priority project for the state, assigned a lead project manager, and began contributing state resources to the restoration design phase. We did this also in partnership with the USDA NRCS, who put a permanent conservation easement on the site. And then over the last 4 years, we've been working with Beals and Thomas on engineering design plans, doing some planning, doing some modeling, and data collection and site assessment that has kind of brought us to this phase today. And as you'll notice, the project involves a series of restoration interventions that can be summarized as the removal of the earthen dikes and berms, a scarification of the Cranberry Farm surface to uncompact the soils and the sand fill that was placed due to nearly 100 years of farming. There is a restoration of a stream channel on site, as well as restoration of other wetland types that are have been currently altered by decades of farming. And let's see if I want. I think, actually, I'll stop there for a second, because I know we might want to pivot.
Yep, and I just wanted to mention a couple other things that I neglected in my presentation. One thing that will be interesting about this project is that Matt Rhodes, who's the owner of Edgewood Bogs, will be the site contractor for this project. So I think it's especially great to have a grower owner who knows the property as well as he does be the person on site making this happen with his crew and his equipment. Just a part of it, vested interest. We will all certainly be a part of the construction if approved, certainly, but having that inherent knowledge as the person constructing this is always really helpful if that can happen. The other thing I just wanted to point out when we were talking about data collection out here and everything that we've done and working with the state and federal agencies on this project, we have had to meet all the criteria for data collection and design. So, it's another reason why our submittal to you and to DEP is a bit robust, because we had to adhere to a lot of different standards in addition to performance standards under the Act and the local bylaw. But one thing I wanted to point out, which I think that is kind of cool, is that we had a consultant do a ground penetrating radar review of this property to essentially corroborate the depth of peat beneath these bogs. And, the age of the bogs is usually pretty indicative around here of significant peat deposits, wetland bogs. But, and I apologize because I only have a small exhibit of it, but the GPR survey was really interesting and, certainly corroborated what we could tell from the surface and, what Matt has known after his years of farming the site. But this is a very wet area that we think will take very little intervention to really, kind of expose what really wants to be there. So it's pretty exciting knowing what's beneath and what will be there to support the life of this wetland system, and really kind of exciting to think about the cycles and the lives that it will go through in different types of vegetation, and really just what will be happening out here will be interesting for many years to come, I think. So it's a great thing to do with the land. I think that we're very lucky to be part of it. It's been a very good experience. I hope that the commission agrees. And again, if anybody would like to go out there, you know how to contact me, or I can certainly pass along the landowner's information through Gary, and you can take a spin out there and see it for yourself. Right now it looks like more bogs, which we're all very used to, but now that you know a little bit more of what is planned out here, I think it is always nice to be able to put eyes on it and see what's out there. So please feel free. So that's really all I had. We're happy to answer questions or talk in more detail about any specifics that the commission would like. Whatever your preference is.
I just want to say real quick, this is very similar but much larger scale, this one, to the one that Eugene caught.
Which
Right.
is
to us?
Next door almost.
It is in the same neck of the
His
woods.
is much smaller, and he's also, you know,
Yep.
doing the work
Yep.
himself, which is nice, yeah.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the difference with that site is that it wasn't one of the
No, it
DER
wasn't. No,
priority
it wasn't.
program
No.
projects,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, he did
um,
that himself, kind of.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know
I
that
think
much
so.
about it.
NRCS was the applicant, actually. Yeah.
Yes, you're
But it
right.
didn't go
Okay.
through.
So I think it's a wetland reserve easement similar
Yeah.
to this, but the state DER program was not involved. So, we're hoping to see more of these projects come to this area. It is a good use of the land for growers who are looking to retire bogs, so don't have anyone from their next generation who's ready to take them on, or, everyone has a different scenario, but it's a really interesting and rewarding project to be part of, so.
Right. Questions? Jim? Any questions? Dave?
The answer to most of them were in the field.
Okay. Dan?
I'm good.
Mr. Jermaine?
I'm fine.
But, well, I just want to comment that it's great you're doing it. I think the landowner should be, I mean, he's initiated this all himself, right? The bog owner, right?
Sorry.
He initiated this whole project himself, right? I mean, he applied for it, he did all that, right?
I was actually not in DER in
Okay.
2018 when this initially started, so I don't know the full backstory, but he's been a great partner the whole way and joins us on a lot of our meetings, and at least when I've been at DER, Matt Rhodes has been a central part of this restoration project. I don't know if you know the backstory on that, but.
No, not really. We kind of came in once all the paperwork was established. Yeah. I mean,
It's a real positive thing, that's why,
it really is. And I also just wanted to point out too, we included, again, sort of a lot more detail than we're used to doing for some of these NOIs, but it really merited this assessment of resource area when we do our typical impacts to mitigation. As I said, all of the work in resource areas is temporary and a necessary part of this type of restoration, which is why we filed this type of NOI. But I just want to point out that in our table, which is also on the plans, sheet RA, which is resource area change plan, we have today's conditions and then proposed, and then a table down here showing, what the numbers shake out to be. And I just wanted to note that of all of the resource areas that we're working in, which is bank, medium high water, BVW, BLSF, land underwater, and the 200-foot riverfront area, everything in the net change column is plus. So based on this design and what we think we can do out here, there's an increase in all of those resource areas as a final result. So, it's a really positive thing to be a part of. It's a significant area. I mean, 34 acres is a big site. So, that's something to be proud of. One thing that I'll point out on this colored plan, you'll see a yellow swath kind of running north-south. Those are 2 upland bogs. So they are newer. They weren't part of the original 1930s bog complex. They were built much later. They are sand bottom, they drain very well, they don't hold water. They are part of the project. They won't be part of the wetlands necessarily, just because they really are truly upland areas. So that what we have planned for those is to, just do kind of a light touch amount of site work, rip up the cranberry mat and just kind of grade it so that it's has a more gentle slope toward the restored wetland area. Right now it has a road that cuts right through it in separating the bogs, as we're used to seeing. But so that road would be graded down, and it would just be a much gentler slope in a transition area as it goes into the upland forest beyond that. So we might seed it, we might plant some small trees out there. We hope that it would eventually become a continuous forest. So it will go through many iterations, I'm sure, over the years. But I just wanted to point that out because they are currently bogs today. You can tell when you see them compared to the wetland bogs that the vines are not doing well. It is extremely dry conditions. So they just, they clearly do not hold water the same way as the wetland bogs do. So it was very interesting to see when you step away and don't care for it and cultivate it, what happens with when nature takes over. So.
Okay. I've got questions only because I want to learn more about this.
We'll try to answer.
First of all, where is the Foothills Preserve in Plymouth? Where exactly?
It's across the street from the parking lot at Tidmarsh Farms. If you're if folks are familiar where Tidmarsh is.
It's Beaver Dam Road.
Beaver Dam Road.
Yep. I was trying to remember the name.
Was Tidmarsh one of your?
Yes.
Yes.
So Tidmarsh Farms was also a restoration project that we ran through DER, DER's funding and technical assistance. That project was completed in 2016, and we've had a lot of lessons learned since then. I actually shared a report with Gary that summarizes 10 years of learning on Cranberry Bog restoration. We've only done a handful of projects at the state now, but we've learned a lot in those 10 years, and we did summarize some of those findings in the report, and then for this project included some of those best practices. So Tidmarsh Farms is one of them. Also, there's Eel River Headwaters in Plymouth. If you've ever walked around that site, that was completed in 2010. That was actually our DER's first Cranberry Bog restoration project, and it's doing really well today. Actually, there's Atlantic white cedars swamp there now, and the Atlantic white cedars are germinating and reproducing. And that, I think, happened 7 years after restoration when the sphagnum moss started coming back in. So we also work with a lot of academic partners to do monitoring at these sites to follow the trajectory of how some of these restoration interventions are working, because it's kind of a newer thing that restoration has been around forever, but the specific restoration actions that we're taking on areas of retired or abandoned cranberry bogs, and we've been finding getting more and more interest from landowners seeking that as an option. Of course, it's totally to their discretion if they would like to explore that route, but it's one other option for a landowner to consider, especially, a lot of times there's an emotional connection to the land where folks like to see it go back to nature, and that's my bias at the state.
And we're working to streamline the process as we
Yes.
go through these projects and make them doable for growers so they don't take years to go through processes. And, when someone decides that this is an option, I think it's sometimes hard to wait for a long time to, to all the pieces fall into place. So I think that, we're all committed to trying to grow the program and help make it a viable option for growers in our area.
Are the Foothills Preserve and Eel River Headwaters open to the public?
Yes.
Foothills is beautiful.
You just drive right in. It's a little parking spot
Okay.
and take a walk around. It's not very big.
Is that the one that's on Long Pond?
Eel River is on Long Pond.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Tidmarsh and Foothills are
Beaver
on
Dam.
Beaver Dam Road. Yep.
Okay. But the one that you're proposing here is going to be private property?
Yes,
Okay.
that's right.
Okay. Is there ample water flow? Is that stream going to be flowing all the time?
That's the plan, yes. Yes, thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Chairman. We're calling it South Meadow Pond. I don't know if that's the official name for it, just south of the airport.
Between the airport and Ward Street?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? Okay. Anecdotally,
Sure.
South Meadow Pond. So that pond has a control structure right at Ward Street that has always been used to manipulate flow to this bog system and beyond. That will remain in place, and we expect that water will continuously flow through this channel. Right now, the bypass canal has water in it. We saw flow today coming through the bogs. I mean, it's low because, we're in a drought, but there is water flowing, and the intent is that water will continue to be conveyed through this channel. And again, self-sustaining is the goal here. So we don't want anyone to have to do any maintenance or be hands-on. So yes, the answer to your question is yes, that's the intent.
Okay. One of my other questions was about maintenance. You just kind of answered that. Can you explain to me how the log jams work and don't become log jams?
Sure. I also have some, I probably should pass around some photos too, some guiding images, but we've used these at some of our other bog sites, actually, particularly Foothills. If you go there, you'll see some great examples of log jams, and in the setting here, where it's actually fairly flat, pretty low flow, we're not talking about a roaring stream. We are using the log jams as a way to sort of wet the valley, if you will. If you think of the 3 wetland cells as a sponge, currently water is either routed around those bogs via the bypass canal or right down the center main ditch very quickly. There's not much contact with the water and the rest of the wetland area, the floodplain, if you will. So the purpose of the log jams are to slow and spread the water. We'll still convey the water through the bogs, but it will allow for some lateral movement of the water to sort of, as we use this, we describe it to wet the sponge, if you will, so that the floodplain can maintain wetland conditions. It also adds habitat complexity. We tend to use large wood features in a lot of our restoration projects for the benefits of wildlife and habitat. And it's also the way that we pin them. You can pin them pretty strategically on top of each other using equipment and driving it into the soil. And we haven't had any issues of them coming unpinned, or if we ever did have that concern, for some of our other sites, we've had engineers propose additional measures to keep them in place. But for the water flow here, the engineer determined that that's not necessary. I don't know if you want anything to add there.
Okay, my last question is, obviously with all the work that has to be done, you're bringing in some heavy equipment to rip up the bogs and create this channel. From the first day that piece of machinery is on the property to the day that it leaves and this thing takes over on its own, how long is that about?
I think it's about 6 months, 6
Okay.
to 9 months.
Okay.
And I know, this one is actually, Sarah mentioned this. This is our first landowner built bog restoration project, which we at DER celebrate. Typically our projects go through a formal construction bid project and we bring in a construction contractor, but what is really neat here is that we can get a lot of landowners involved who have a ton of experience doing this type of work at their bogs, not the restoration work, but working and with heavy equipment. And I know that in discussions with our team, the engineer, and with the landowner, I think he estimated between 6 and 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be phased.
Okay.
In different, I think they're going to go, well, technically the first cell, I think, is cell number 5. And so work will start in cell 5, then it will go down to 4, 3, and then the Upland Bogs after. The bypass canal will be the last piece in construction sequencing, because we will use the bypass canal actually to hold the water during construction.
Okay.
Right.
And help with sedimentation and erosion control.
That would make the most sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we
built
would,
in.
that would get addressed at the very end, in addition to the water control structures. Actually, we didn't touch on that. There are some pieces of infrastructure. Ecological connectivity and habitat connectivity is an important pillar of this project. And so the infrastructure, other than the weir at the pond, which is actually off of the property for this restoration, but anything within the boundary of our restoration project that is a water control structure will be removed, and water will be allowed to freely flow.
So you could conceivably empty the pond?
This structure is staying in place.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, except for that, except
Yep.
for
Oh, okay.
the structure that's technically off of the conservation easement, so that, as Sarah said, the assumption and intent is that that will be maintained as is, as it has been.
The other thing too, when you look at this design, this is a very wide stream channel. Realistically, I think it will probably end up being narrower so that we're not spreading the flow out, just creating a floodplain. We want to create a channel that will have flowing water. So this is a, widest case scenario more than likely. And I think the layout of it really follows that GPR line and just, what we think is the natural stream channel. But more than likely, in some of these extremely wide areas, it will end up being narrower, with narrower banks, and then floodplain and, a gentle grade out from there. But I just wanted to point that out because we want it to look something like this, but it may not be this exact, layout.
And it's going to depend on what the season is.
That's right.
A
And
tremendous amount of rain and a really wet spring, and it could look exactly like that.
that's right.
It could end up looking twice this size.
Right. So I think, some flexibility with how this gets constructed
Sure.
is just, par for the course.
We'll make Savory leave his tape measure at home. He's not
Yeah.
gonna. He'll go right out and he'll measure that hunk of wood right to that edge.
I was going to go to Ward Street with an inner tube. Go
Probably
down the
could.
Lazy River.
Well, no, you can't now, because there's gonna be
Okay.
log jams.
Log jams, yeah.
That's right, I'll duck. My last question is, and came up when you were talking about the fact that this is the owner who's doing all the work. Is there a guarantee that he will see this through to completion?
His
We
word.
hope.
Well, no,
I don't know the intricacies of the contract that he has signed.
Okay, I mean, I'm not saying
Yeah.
that it
If-
wouldn't, but
if you-
sometimes things happen.
Yeah,
course,
if
of
he would
course.
like to get paid as well, or he has a contract with the NRCS for perform the
Okay.
construction.
Okay.
Which
And
means he's
they,
obviously provided the insurance requirements and so forth and so
Okay.
on.
yes, so there is a
And-
contract in place, and
Sure.
while DER we provided the funding for the engineering design, the assessment, the permitting, the NRCS is providing the construction funding. And so Mr. Rhodes has a separate contract with them that pays out at different milestones as well. So
Okay,
Happy
I
to-
think that would.
yes, that answers all my questions. This is great.
I do have another, so when you did that GPR survey, you could actually see the old channel? And you're mapping it based on what the
Well,
buried channel is?
There was
Yeah.
some creative license with the
Okay.
exact location of the channel, but the main thoroughfare with the depth of peat, from the northern part of the bog to the southern part of the bog, really, it went from a dark yellow to green to blue being the deepest, densest part of the peat. So it was, fairly easy on this site to connect the dots.
That's
Yeah,
impressive.
the it's pretty typical that where you have the deeper peat deposits, and I think on site here there are 10 to 11 at the deepest point. I think maybe it goes to 11 feet of buried peat. So the GPR gives us how much sand, and typically the sand layer is 1 to 2 feet. And once you dig below the sand layer, you tend to find the footprint of the former wetland. Sometimes you even find like old tree stumps in there.
Preserved for eternity.
Right, because some of these sites historically were, well, a lot of them were swamps or Atlantic white cedar swamps, and we've done some tree analysis too from what we found in the peat. Very interesting stuff. But it's a good indicator of where there was either standing water or flowing water in the areas that you have deeper peat deposits. So we tend to follow the footprint of the peat deposit as a guidepost for, we don't force wetlands where there was not a wetland once. And the fun and challenging thing about cranberry bog sites is sometimes it's actually really hard to tell when you go to a cranberry bog if it in fact was a wetland previously or if it was built into an upland area. So there's a lot of subsurface investigation that goes on to confirm that. And for this property, that was actually very easy to identify that this was a wetland. And historic maps show stream flowing, just natural stream flow right through the property from if you look at the 1800 maps.
right, anybody else? Anyone in the audience? Yes, sir. Just sign in, please.
Yeah. Good evening. I know some of you from Cedar Meadow Cranberry. We've been out there looking at another project adjacent and done some projects with you. So I think this is a good project.
Excuse me, you're going to need to identify yourself just for the listening audience, if you don't mind.
Okay. My name's Eric Pontiff from Cedar Meadow Cranberry.
Thank you, Eric.
We're the direct abutter downstream from this project. And generally speaking, we support the project, but we think there's a couple details that need to be worked out with it. So if you look at this site individually and you look at the plans, everything seems to make sense. But I think what hasn't been discussed is that this is the headwaters for the Weweantic River. So all the water originated for that river starts here at this South Meadow Pond. Matt, the owner of Edgewood, had been releasing water from the pond from that water control structure to flood the bogs, for picking, for winter protection for the bogs. That water then gets sent down to our bogs, and we protect our bogs with them. We harvest our bogs with them. We then send it further downstream to the Hannula Bog Complex off of 58. They send the water further downstream to Weston's Bogs across the street. So by the permitting of this project and this project moving forward, all the historical water flow that has taken place over the past 100 years is now going to be cut off. The water control structures that are on the property are going to be removed, with the exception of one, and that's the one for the South Meadow Pond. So the landowner now still controls that water control structure, and the intention is that there's no reason for him to let that water go. He has other bogs on South Meadow Pond, the Queen Bog Complex on the other side of the airport, which he wants to reserve all this water for. So all the cranberry growers downstream who have cultivated cranberry bogs, what are cultivated wetlands, as well as the Great Cedar Swamp, are solely dependent on the flow of this water that has come down here. So the permitting of this project affects much more wetland-related activities, both natural and cultivated, than has been described here. So the first time I've received the plans, other than knowing about the hearsay of this project, was yesterday, and that's perfectly fine. So this is the first public forum in which these ideas or issues have been discussed. So I reached out to Matt, the property owner, today and said, this is an issue, and I think the solution is that we need to have a written agreement about the release of water out of that pond to continue. And if that's not going to happen, you're affecting all the wetlands downstream. So this activity has happened for over 100 years. The bogs that we have there are from the 1930s, and they were probably cultivated at the similar time that this bog system went into place. So while I don't have an issue with the project as it exists, as it sits on its own, if we just look at that plan for what's there, but there's serious wetland consequences to this project moving forward. So my suggestion would be, and certainly ask any questions you have for me, but my suggestion would be that we continue this until that agreement is in place for that water to be mutually agreed upon that it's going to continue. This is a large project. This is 34 acres of wetland change in the town of Carver, and I don't know that that's ever happened. So I think that while this sounds like a great environmental project, there are floodwater concerns with how it's taking place.
You said you spoke to the property owner today?
I did, yeah. So
was there any kind of next steps talked about, or?
Yeah, so I think the next step is that we document that agreement in writing.
Okay.
So,
but he was amenable to something along those lines, or?
Right, the devil's in the details, but
okay.
I think the intention, though, is that he would like to preserve all the water within that pond and not let it downstream. And that's part of this project.
Okay.
Because he has other options for that water.
So what currently
Understood.
happens with the water now? He lets it down now? Is that?
Yeah, so he will flood that 34 acres of bog, and when that water is released from that bog, it then floods our bog, and then we release it, and other growers utilize that water. So by the changing of the activity on this wetland, those activities don't continue anymore.
Right, because you can't get enough water down that stream to flood your bog. They would have to flood this bog first, and they don't want to flood this anymore. They want this to go back to natural
Correct.
with the stream that
Well-
hopefully Sarah's saying is going to be this wide, and obviously that's not going to feed a bog.
So I
But
see.
what's at issue is you're wanting not to lose flow rate.
Or volume of flow, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Still,
and then I guess my
Still
question
a
then
big
goes
deal.
to Sarah. Once this is all done, what type of flow rate could we expect once the project is
Well,
done?
I just want to thank Eric for coming tonight and voicing his concern. I think, he's protecting his farm, which is perfectly understandable. I agree that it probably makes sense to continue this discussion so that the two landowners can talk about an agreement, because, Jess and I are not the appropriate people to make that kind
I
of
think
decision.
it involves other landowners as well. It involves the whole chain.
Well, I
Because
mean,
everybody gets affected by this.
it
Right.
becomes complicated though, because
Oh, yeah.
who has rights to what? I mean, I don't really want to get into that in this
No, I
forum
agree
because I
with
don't
you.
think that that's appropriate. And I think it's better served for all of us, for the two landowners to have this discussion. I know cranberry growers survive on cooperation, so I am confident that they can get to a solution that works for everybody. Right? So, I've talked to both parties about this, and I think they just need to discuss and get comfortable with something. And I think Eric's suggestion of having something in writing, that always is a good idea, just so there are no questions down the line. And, I think that really should happen before we close out this process.
I just have a question. Is it going to be that much less flow? I mean, it's still going to be flowing through the stream.
Correct.
So,
The intention is that
using-
it's just always going to be wet, as opposed to
Right.
the large volume
When
flooding
he floods the
for
whole
harvest
bog.
or winter floods that then gets released.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
even if there's more water released prior to when Eric is expecting it for his harvest, I mean, something like that, I'm sure can be sorted out between the landowners. I don't see that as an insurmountable hurdle. After talking with both parties, I think they can come up with something. And as I said, as a grower myself, we all depend on each other. And so I would hope that we can get to a resolution on that, because I think this project could actually be helpful for you in terms of having more leeway to hold water, even if it backs up onto this property prior to your needs. Now that Edgewood is not cultivating a crop, they're not going to have as many restrictions on their land. So in the end, that may end up helping you. And, so I think we can certainly get there. And I'm glad to know that this concern exists, and, we'll work to find a solution before your next meeting.
And Eric, this is the sole source of water for you?
I mean,
For
we
the
have
most
some
part.
ponds on site, but they're solely fed from this. So,
Okay, right,
groundwater,
okay.
we're able to use the groundwater. The issue with water rights or control is that everything's great while everybody has water. And then when, one person doesn't have it, then the other person doesn't have it either. It's not like one has it and the other doesn't, and everybody can help out.
Right.
So
Stepping
you
stones.
kind of have to have a clear path when things get tight, who actually has the right to it.
Okay. Yep.
Was
Understood.
this, I'm going to ask the question, was this also you wanted to make some changes to one of your reservoirs?
Yeah.
Is this what brought this on? Was this,
Yeah, it was specifically related.
because I remember you saying, we
we
did
knew
a
this
site
was-
visit at that time, and you said that, this could become a water supply issue, and this is why you wanted to enlarge one of your reservoir areas, because you were concerned about where the water was coming from.
Yeah.
So this has, it has impact. So I think it's more than just the landowners getting together. I think it needs to be looked at from a bunch of different angles. I'm absolutely in favor of continuance.
Oh, yeah,
So
I am
I'm
too.
nowhere near ready to do anything
There's no
with this.
question about it. And, you know, we're only in the middle of July and we're already in an August drought. So, I'm fine with continuing this as long as it takes to make sure that everybody, not only you, but everyone downstream
Yeah,
from
this
you.
is one of those I's got to be dotted and T's got to be crossed, and we gotta do this right.
Okay.
I'm sure the state, it's very seldom that we see somebody come in before conservation with as much enthusiasm for their job that Jess has, and I think that's great. But I wanna look at the flip side of the coin, because with every good side, there's a bad side. So I wanna see that, the impact. I have no doubt that restoring 34 acres of, you know, land back to Mother Nature, and I'm sure that 10 years from now, there'll be giant trees on the thing, and there'll be frogs and all that other stuff. But I wanna make sure that this gentleman's not out of business because of it. Do you know what I'm saying?
I understand. He has to protect his
Sure.
agricultural
It's
interests.
like you need to protect yours.
Agreed.
You know?
I just, I want to make sure we stay on target.
Oh, yeah, we
To
will.
your discussion
I-
earlier, the purview of this board. So I just, we want to
Right.
make sure we keep it. And that's why I think it's better for them to kind of have this discussion
Oh, I'd much rather-
offline.
That's right.
That's
Well,
fine.
we don't have the authority to force them to work out a deal anyhow.
Right.
Right.
And I
So-
think what complicates it a little too is that the weir at the pond, the water control structure, is actually off of the conservation easement and off of the polygon of this project, if you will. So it's actually just upstream of the restoration where the water control management is in question.
But our concern is still, well, I can't say ours, I have to say mine, because I get yelled at by the rest of this board. My concern is always for the resident landowner. And as much as I love conservation, we all have to eat and make a living. So I absolutely want to make sure that everything works.
Well, you're not going to like this because I agree
Of
with
course
you.
I'm not gonna
No,
like
because I agree with you in that we have a
When you say that
role.
again, I want to make sure they get that on tape.
I agree with Alan Germain. My name's Dan Badger, 165 Plymouth Street.
Ashley,
No,
write that down.
To our point earlier about different commissions, sorry to go off slightly off topic, but it's really shouldn't be off topic, and that is that we are part of a bigger picture as well. And if we can play a role in that checks and balances that I mentioned before, then I think that it's a positive and healthy thing without, even if it's one extra hoop. It keeps everyone honest, and it keeps projects like this, actually, it would keep projects like this going in terms of inspiring people to do more things like this and not be afraid, because they are squarely in line with understanding the rules as to what's involved. So,
And not to say, there are some impeccable qualities of the representatives. There's everybody's above board. You know how this board feels, considers you, Sarah. Obviously, Eric, you've been up front and honest with us. So we have no reason to dispute anyone, and I agree with you. I think that when they all sit down, there'll be a very simple solution to the whole thing, and it will all get itself worked out, because they are dependent upon one another. And that's the way it's been in this town for 100 years. So I don't think that's ever going to come. It's certainly not going to become a twisting point here. I just want to make sure it's defined out so that everybody is on board and happy. I don't want to hear anybody saying, no, we can't do this.
and I've never publicly said that I like Sarah, and I like everything I'm hearing.
I never said I like Sarah either. I simply said she's never lied to us.
But,
Okay.
That's to my knowledge.
but compromises can be made with the design too. You can have more open water, or allow more of that stuff.
Anything
right?
is possible.
Right. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, and that's why we kind of want some fluidity to the design, because it needs to work for everybody.
Right.
I think that this site lends itself well to a self-sustaining wetland. It just, we can hold water, we can let water go, we can, increase it. I think there are a lot of possibilities here. And, I think the conversation between the two landowners will hopefully uncover that, and we'll find a solution and report back.
I would hope that Eric, you're as optimistic.
Yeah, no, certainly.
All right. Well, that being said, I will,
Make a motion to continue the 0 South Meadow Road NOI DEPSC 126649 to,
Third?
how long do you
it's
think
too
that
soon.
these discussions might take to get to an agreement?
Want to do a month? We'll do the second meeting in August?
I mean, without the landowner here, it's hard for me to say. I mean, I would hope that they could
Do you want to
talk
say
about
the
this.
17th, and then if it's not done
We
by
can
then?
do it the 3rd and then continue it if you don't, if you're
I
not
think
ready, we
let's-
can kick it down to
If it's
17th.
okay with the commission, let's go for 2 weeks, and
Okay.
then I will
Okay.
reach
That's
out to
fine.
Gary if we need a second continuance. And
So it'll be
maybe go
August
from there.
3rd, and if you can, if that's gonna not work, then just let them know, and
Yeah.
we'll just continue it with, you don't have to come here that night, we'll just mark it
Yeah.
as a
Right,
continuance.
all she has to do is, send an email in writing.
that's it.
That's all you have to do.
Okay, I think that is
Okay.
fair. All
Fine,
right.
so,
That's my motion, Mr.
we have a motion to,
Second.
we have a motion to, and a second to continue the hearing for 0 South Meadow Road, NOI, DEPSC 126649 to Wednesday, August 3rd. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, ready to go. Next is minutes. I think. Is there, can I ask what you were here for this evening?
We were just wondering what's gonna happen with those telephone poles that are in the bog.
Well, that's not on our agenda tonight, so we can't speak of it.
Well, we can give them an update. Didn't they pull some off of Rochester Road?
I think they started to pull them off Rochester Road.
As far as I know, they started.
Yeah, I think Rochester Road is first before
So
Tremont.
I don't know if new ones are going in the ground yet, or the cement ones are going in. We should put that on for an agenda item for next meeting.
Yeah, an update.
And let's
Let's
get
do
an
that.
update on it. So thank you for mentioning that. I think we should do that for August 3rd. We'll have an update to what's going on, and we'll be able to give a report on both
We
projects.
can talk to
Yeah, the one
Julianne.
on Tremont's a real eyesore.
Yeah, there's something going on. I read something, I thought it was
Yeah,
on
I saw them-
Facebook
a
about a
picture.
lawsuit and stuff too, so
Yeah, there is a lawsuit, but
there's some stuff going on with
There's a
that.
lawsuit for Rochester.
Rochester Road,
On
yes.
the neighbor.
So
Yes.
we'll bring that up to speed too. There was a giant public records request, I think it was on some conservation documents and the NOI approvals
On those?
on that Rochester
Oh,
Road project,
really?
yeah. So-
yes,
So, yeah, thank you. That's a great idea.
Thank you.
right.
It's kind of late for a record, but we already get, you should do it.
No, it's not, but it's part of the lawsuit, so it's part of a
Oh.
thing. I make a
Uh,
motion that we approve the minutes for July 6th, 2022 as printed. I didn't find anything wrong.
I didn't either.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of July 6th. As written, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
All right?
Any
Well,
opposed?
Yep.
Did you
Motion-
want to say something? You started to say something, I thought.
No, we don't care.
No.
We don't care.
I'm just kidding.
It's too
I'm
philosophical.
just kidding.
Okay, I'll take a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we're out. Thank you
We're
all.
out.
Thank you, Area 58.